Welcome to the WORKOLOGY podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger at bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of WORKOLOGY.
I love fall. It's such a fun time. Kids back to school, cooler weather, Halloween, my fall planting, and HR technology. Fall season is HR technology conference season, and there is no other conference like the HR technology conference in Las Vegas, the 18th through the 21st of October. This week, I'm going to be talking about emerging HR technologies and recruiting technologies. These are companies that won't have the biggest booths. They might not even be exhibiting at the conference. There are attendees, or they might be at other events that are surrounding the Las Vegas conferences, maybe the IAEWS Fall Congress, the HR Tech Tank event that's happening also in Las Vegas just before. These companies are changing and helping to mold the future of our industry, which it's important for us to take a look at them. These are companies that analysts, your traditional analysts, might not have heard about. And frankly, these are my favorite ones because they're really pushing the boundaries. And if you're an innovator as a practitioner in the space, you're really looking to change the game, these are some companies that you should consider. This is a series of 3 mini interviews. I'm going to be sitting down with different founders, CEOs of companies, with organizations that are just getting started, that are going to be making a big impact going forward. And maybe they have already. 53% of us as practitioners, recruiting, HR, are going to be making purchases in HR tech where we're increasing our spending. So we're not just keeping things the same, we're increasing our spending. So we're looking at things differently. As we're going forward and looking at our plans, it's important to understand where the priorities lie. And Sierra Cedar put together a really nice report that looks at the top technology plans for HR in 2015. Here are the U.S. priorities, which I like this particular survey because they look at Asia Pac and Europe as well, which depending upon your organization, where your offices are located and what your plans are, these are things that you should be considering. So U.S. priorities include, number 1, HR dashboards, 2, lifecycle management and onboarding, 3, embedded core HR systems analytics, 4, manager self-service, and 5, career planning and development. Now, if you just go to bloggingforjobs.com and click in the search bar, I'll have a link to this report so you'll be able to access the full report. It is full of really great information. And this will help you in looking at these emerging HR technologies, where we're going, the future, and what's happening. So sit back and enjoy these 3 mini interviews with the founders and CEOs of these really cool emerging HR technology companies. As part of our Emerging HR Technology interview series leading up to Human Resources Technology Conference in Las Vegas, I am joined by Amit Chahad, and he is the CEO and founder of a really great HR technology company. Can you talk a little bit about your company and what you guys are doing?
Well, thanks a lot, Jessica, for inviting me to this podcast. So, I'm the CEO of co-founder of Recruit, which is a job advertising platform. The idea behind Recruit is to take jobs to the candidates who are not actively looking for jobs on job boards. So, what we basically do is we convert traditional job postings into engaging and branded banner ads, and we publish them on highly targeted websites on web and also social. So it's like technically like job advertising in real time and reaching out to candidates completely hidden from job boards.
And that's Recroup, Recroup, correct?
That's correct.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your background and how you ended up in the human resources technology space.
Yeah, so I don't actually come with recruiting space. So I have a background in technology, technical and marketing. So when I was in India in 2012, and there was a recruiting drive conducted by Google. So I just end up in the recruiting drive, and I figured out there was nearly 2 kilometer long line outside the venue, and I realized that there's still so much can be done in recruiting space. So that's when we started prototyping Recruit. The idea at that time was very different. We were dealing with the digital portfolio system, which we have changed and pivoted since then. That was my entry point, and since then I've started to learn more about industry, and definitely learn from you and other HR journalists who write and talk about what the future of HR holds.
Well, let's talk about some different parts of the job advertising space, and in particular, in case someone is new to this sort of field or they're not familiar with some of the terminology. Can you kind of walk us through what retargeting is and how that might be used in recruitment or HR job posting or promotion?
Exactly, definitely. So, so before we actually get into retargeting in specific, so job advertising space in a whole is changing because the traditional method of posting a job is something that even employers are trying to move away, and they're trying to experiment with different technologies. So that's when then we feel that okay, everything that we do with the traditional products or traditional advertising, that can be you can say implemented exactly the same in job advertising as well. So that's when like the same in the same manner we can implement retargeting, where we can put jobs based on you can say understanding of a candidate or understanding of an audience that who have in past conveyed interest in similar job openings. So this way companies or employers don't just like build an audience where they can actively promote their jobs, but also they understand that the passive audience that they are creating, they're the right ones who have shown interest in the job. And this way, like not just like they save money while actually advertising to the audience, but also get better results.
I feel like in the employment branding space, and also, as you mentioned, the job posting space is really changing as we're looking more social and then targeted engagements. And Recruit, in my mind, really allows you to be able to engage targeted job candidates in a new and different way.
That's totally true, and the major concept and the idea behind Recruit is not just to advertise job posting, but also to promote an employer brand, and you can say to create to actually just do an outreach by employers to tell passive candidates, or you can say to tell audience that hey, we are a company and we are always hiring. So now this kind of engagement that's happening, and I think social media has played a critical role in that. So since we have all those tools available outside, so it's also always good for any employer to or any company to use those tools in the best way possible. And Recruit just gives an you can say becomes an extension that helps employers to use those tools without actually having to spend too much time and energy trying to learning the entire capabilities.
Now, I know you're going to be in Las Vegas for two events, IAEWS, which is the International Association of Employment Websites Fall Congress, and HR Tech as well. How can people go about maybe connecting with you there or scheduling a demo or learning more about you and what Recruit does?
Well, I'm booking demos and events, and I'm looking to meet as many people as I can because it's a both events are going to be really amazing with great people and great networking. So anyone who's willing to connect with me, they can just email me at amit@recruit.com, or like they can visit the booth. We are located in Startup Pavilion, and like we can go from there. And I'm open to everyone who's willing to meet us.
Awesome. Well, I love the Startup Pavilion. I think it's a great place for those who are attending the conference to be able to look at emerging HR technologies that are up and coming, that are really working to redefine the space and innovate in such an industry that up until recently hasn't had a lot of change.
I think like having a HR startup pavilion is actually very interesting because usually like a lot of time in big trade shows like startup companies are shadowed by the bigger brands, But like having a dedicated space, I think it will give us a lot more visibility, and we'll get like more people who will know about us than it might have been without a startup pavilion, I would say.
Well, I look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks at the HR Technology Conference and IAEWS. I hope that everybody will visit the Startup Pavilion, connect with Amit, and learn more about Recruit.
Thanks a lot, Jessica. I look forward to meeting you as well.
And we're back with John Bell, who is the CEO and founder of Rethink Data, and he's going to be talking about his new emerging HR technology. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Glad to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about Rethink Data and also your background, because I think that's quite interesting. Like, tell us more about Rethink and data and how you got involved in human resources and recruiting.
Great. Appreciate it. Well, I go all the way back to basically the mid-1980s when I was in the staffing business, when the internet started really to become mainstream in the mid-1990s. I started a company called Boxwood Technology. And Boxwood was a job board platform, and we focused on building career centers and job boards for associations. Out of that, we built a business with about 1,200 career centers. Numbers of those clients we put into networks. As last year, we were approached by a great company, the Naylor organization, and they purchased Boxwood. When we sold Boxwood, we didn't sell everything. We had a project, and we hadn't really started a company at that point, but we had a project we've been working on for a couple of years, and we spun it off and started what today is Rethink Data. Rethink Data is a SaaS technology company. The product that we've created, our flagship product, is titled Simple API. And what we've done is created a solution that enters any marketplace. We're actually in the association space as our first market, and now online recruitment is a second market. But it enters an industry at an ecosystem solution level, so that we are trying to solve big problems with a single solution, so that it reduces cost, it reduces the technology challenges, and can really make a difference when implemented. For this industry, the online recruitment industry, we know that there's been a disconnect between job boards and recruitment sites and the ATS providers that employers are using as their base for posting jobs and receiving candidates from external job sources. So the disconnect I'm speaking of is that the candidate experience when they start their job search at a job board recruitment site and end up applying for the job over on the employer's ATS website is really horrific. It's so bad that data is emerging that 9 out of 10 candidates are abandoning the application process just because of frustration and the fact that it takes too long, and they're putting in repetitive data over and over again every time they apply for different jobs. So what we've done with Simple API is created a middleware solution that enables the job board industry recruitment groups to connect with Simple API, and then Simple API connects with all of the different applicant tracking systems. The value that we bring is the ability to scale this so that a job board, if you could imagine, instead of having to create 50 to 100 unique integrations to try to integrate data over during the application process with all the different ATS companies, in our solution, recruitment sites creates one integration with Simple API, and they're done. What we do is we connect to all of the 50 or 100 ATSs that are out there so that we act almost like a data policeman. And when the candidate comes through the process on their way to the ATS to apply for a job, we can pull their information out of the job board profile and include that information with the candidate when they land over on the ATS. Now what happens then is the ATS takes that data and pre-populates the application form. In many instances, we can complete the application, so all the candidate has to do is just hit the finish button and they've completed their application. If the employer has created a very custom application process with compliance issues that are important, questions about compliance, and then also questions that are knockout questions or pre-screening questions, all customized at the job level, What we'll do in conjunction with a partnership with the ATS is complete as much of the application form as possible with the profile information from the Career Center, leaving the candidate only to have to fill in those customized fields and forms in the form. So at the end, it shortens the application process. The candidate gets much better experience when they're transferred from job board to ATS. And the bottom line is that the employer receives more candidate applications per job than they would have without this integration at Simple API. Hope that wasn't too complex, but if you captured all of that, that's what we're doing in the space.
I think all this is great to talk about, integration, why it's important, how we can work together to help eliminate that candidate drop-off that we're hearing so much about when candidates go to the applicant tracking system and then they disappear off to, who knows where. We want to capture those people and take a look at their application and maybe they're a great fit for our company.
In the recruitment space, from the job board side, they often term the fact that when a candidate leaves the job board going over to the ATS, it goes into a black hole. And one of the great things we discovered is that there are no bad people on either side. Everybody's trying to do the right thing. Everyone's trying to get the value for the employer out of the process. It's just that we've got separate silos that haven't integrated data-wise, and the communication hasn't been there between the two groups. So it's fascinating to get into the middle of it and start both sides talking, and I think it's going to be a real win-win for everyone.
Now, I know you'll be in Las Vegas for IAEWS, but you'll also be there, be roaming around for HR Tech too as well, correct?
That's correct. I'd love to connect with anyone that would like to get together at HR Tech. I've got a group of people or a team of people that'll be at IAEWS. I'm chairing that event this fall, so I'll be busy with Peter Weddle running the event, but we'll have folks at an exhibit booth at IAEWS. But then we will be, as you said, at HR Tech, and I'd love to connect with anyone there. We're pretty flexible during those 3 or 4 days.
I encourage my recruiting and HR practitioner listeners to sit down, maybe schedule some time and talk with John and his team, because what they're really trying to do is going to make our lives so much simpler and easy. And I think it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. It's terrific, and thanks for the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Thanks, John Bell with Rethink Data, for joining us to talk about your new emerging HR technology. I'm really excited to talk to this next guest about their new and emerging HR technology. I'm talking with Michael Heller of iReview. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jessica. Great to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about what iReview is and how it works.
Sure. So iReview is what I'm calling a tool or an app to help organizations provide real-time microfeedback to their employees and then aggregate it so that it makes it easier on managers to put together their annual assessment at the end of the year.
Awesome. So it's real-time feedback, real-time engagement, not just like that 1 or 2 times a year that you're sitting in that formal setting where you're talking about performance and how people, your employee and population is doing in their work.
That's correct. And it's funny, years ago I thought of the concept of iReview, and it came out of frustration. So, each persona that I was at an organization, I felt like I had a frustration with. For example, when I was an employee, I felt like I was frustrated because my manager would provide me with feedback once a year, which was way too infrequent. And a lot of times I heard about things that I could have corrected months ago had I known about it months ago. But the manager probably said to themselves, well, there's this area that I think he could be better at. I could talk to him about it, but wait, let me just push it off. We'll talk about it at the annual assessment, because that's when I need to talk to him about this challenging topic. Or other managers would only report back on the annual assessment for the things that happened in the past couple of months, because honestly, it was what they could remember or retrieve from emails and other people. As a manager, I found that it, was a really big time drain, because I had to go in and write these annual assessments and collect and corroborate all this information and data over the course of time from others about my direct reports. And it took on average, 2.5 hours to write this information and to deliver it. And, undoubtedly, I wasn't perfect. I forgot stuff too. So my employee would walk away frustrated. So then to further compound the issue, as an executive at an organization, the executive team put together their strategic goals for the year. And they said, okay, we want to connect individual action with the employees to these strategic goals. And a great way to monitor that, or to put a metric behind it, would be with the annual assessment. However, what people have found is that it was just not a good tool for that because of the reasons I mentioned a second ago. And then finally, as HR, I had to chase managers down to provide feedback to their employees. And it was really hard. So I pulled together iReview. And remember, I'm an HR person, not a technical person. I tried to do it with a really people-centric design in mind to make it easy to adopt, easy to use, and easy to get managers and employees talking again.
I like this, and I like the mobile aspect of it because there's no excuse. You don't have to block out 2.5 hours of your time to be able to sit down and write all the information. It comes in small spurts over time. And honestly, as someone who's had a manager and managed teams, you often don't really know how your employees do or are, if they're doing well or what they're not, or what they are doing. You need to get feedback. And if you wait till the last minute, it's just not complete.
That's absolutely right. And when you think about it, now we're entering the age, and I'm sure you've heard this before too, that the quote-unquote millennials are taking over, and they have all these different ways and styles of working, and they're lazy, and they're this, and they're that. They're actually not any. I don't believe millennials are lazy at all. I actually think that they're really conscientious workers. I do think that they, and we've created this, they want to work when they want to work and from where they want to work. So they're geographically dispersed, and they telework quite a bit too. But I also think that they're very technologically savvy. I mean, they were basically born with a smartphone. They don't even know what a cassette tape or maybe even a CD is. They know digital music. And they also are a lot less loyal, comparatively speaking, to other generations, to their companies in the workplace. One of the things they want is more feedback more frequently. And what I'll tell you, Jessica, is that our research has shown that all generations want more feedback more frequently. The millennials are just more vocal about it. This is a great tool to help organizations engage millennials better.
I absolutely agree with you. There's a OC Tanner study, and I'll link to it in the transcript of the podcast, but lists recognition as the number one driver of employee satisfaction. So 37% of employees said all they need is recognition. So that's communication, that's follow-up in order for them to be happy in their jobs.
Wait, it's not money?
Money's down the list a little bit, but just engagement. I mean, I think the money's secondary. Like, who doesn't want to have a little bit extra so they can buy that new iPhone or, whatever technology, but mostly people just want to be appreciated.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is true. A lot of what I've seen, and again, as HR pros, we've been saying this for years, there's a lot better ways to engage your employee than just throwing a bonus or more salary at them. And by the way, it doesn't take much to do, just a little bit of thought. One of those things is recognition, or quite frankly, I would say that employees get more engaged if they're given good, constructive feedback, and talk to like they're real people. I mean, something I recently wrote was about the feedback sandwich, and I know you know what the feedback sandwich is. I don't think that that's the right way to give feedback anymore when you need to give something constructively. I do believe that if you talk straight with your employees and talk to them honestly, they may not like what they hear at first, and it might sting at first, but they're certainly going to appreciate and respect what you have to say and be glad that you talk to them straight.
Agreed. Well, let's go back to something you said earlier, because I want to make this distinction because I think it's really important about your background. You are a HR practitioner. So talk a little bit about your career and how you came to deciding to launch a HR technology.
Again, I talked a little bit about what I did to launch it and came out of frustration. But, when I first started my HR career, I was a recruiter at a recruiting agency that has since been purchased twice and is now part of, I think, what's called Kforce. And I always felt like I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to be unique and I wanted to be memorable. So I used to recruit a little bit differently before the days of job boards. I wanted to find people who were really best fits at organizations, not somebody who could just fill the gap. And I took that through the rest of my careers, whether I was an in-house recruiter at a large consulting firm or a recruiting manager. I really wanted to take that and meld to my clients' needs. And even when I was in-house, the folks that I supported, I considered my clients. I went on to lead large recruiting teams and then lead other aspects of HR. And I found that each time, to help make it interesting for me and keep me passionate about what I was doing, I'd look for ways to really become one with my clients and become that trusted advisor. And it wasn't just about talking, hey, I need a seat at your table. It was about saying, what could I do that is most helpful? What's the type of stuff that's really, negatively impacting you? What are the things that I can take off of your plate that'll make it easier for you? And I think if others take that customer service mentality, they're going to find that they're happier at their jobs, but also they're better appreciated. And, you talk about getting that positive feedback. That's where I felt like I was really in the sweet spot of my career. So after I was in-house for a while, I decided to do HR consulting on my own, and I launched a small, regional HR consulting shop called Pillar One Consulting. And again, my goal was, not to do the tried and true methodology. A lot of people in my industry talk about what are best practices. And I thought that those were important to learn from, but I also felt like a best practice, for example, at Accenture might not be something that works that you can just plug and play at any other organization. So I felt like what I really wanted to do was engage in what's called next practices, not what's best, but what's best for you, and take some of my lessons learned and apply them to an organization after finding out and becoming part of that organization. And that's sort of, in a long nutshell, where I meandered throughout my career, Jessica.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about where people can go to learn more about you and iReview.
Sure. So I'm on Twitter at Michael_Heller. You can go to our website to learn more about iReview at iReview, which is spelled IREVU.me. And I'm also on Instagram as @TheMichaelHeller, and I'd love to catch up with anybody who's interested in finding out more.
And you'll also be meandering around Las Vegas for the HR Technology Conference, too.
I will be meandering around, and if anybody wants to get in touch with me and meet up there, my email address is very simple, and I'm going to give my personal one. It's michael.heller@me.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, Michael. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jessica. It was a pleasure.
And that concludes this Workology podcast episode where we're discussing emerging HR technologies. This is one in a 3-part series in preparation for Human Resources Technology Conference, which happens October 18th through the 21st, 2015 in Las Vegas. There'll be a lot of things going on: IAEWS, HR Tech Tank, and of course, HR Tech. Thanks again for joining us on the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace HR and recruitment. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our previous episodes. Have a great day.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by Total Picture Media.